to another edition of Cosmetic Kitchen, and today we decided to do something that is probably the number one thing that I get requested is how do you make your own sugaring and how do you make your own wax? So we are going to make one preparation of wax. I'm going to show you how you will take it from a strip wax to a hard wax, okay? So you'll see here, this is actually what the end product of the hard wax looks like, and this is what the soft wax is going to look like. So I hope you have your pens and paper ready because I'm going to give you the recipe right now. If you're going to make a hard wax, you are going to want 2 cups of granulated sugar. I have white granulated sugar. You could use like unrefined, like organic sugar that also has molasses. Just know that cook time is going to be a little bit longer. And it's going to be hard to tell that color change because you're starting with a darker sugar, but it can be done, okay? You're also going to need a 1/4 cup of water and a 1/4 cup of lemon juice, okay? You will see recipes that will use either vinegar or lime juice. Lime is a really easy swap out if you don't have lemon. You can use vinegar because basically we need the acidity to help combine everything and get it to the texture that we need. Just know that if you use vinegar, the proportions is going to be a little different, okay? Because it's much more acidic. And also, it may have that underlying vinegary smell to it. So I'm going to go with the traditional method. Now, if you want to strip wax, your formula is going to be slightly different. If you want to strip soft wax, you're only going to need 1 cup of granulated sugar. And you're still going to use a 1/4 cup of water and a 1/4 cup of lemon juice, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a hard wax recipe with 2 cups. Having said that, I'm going to show you what color we would stop at to get your strip wax, and then what color we would stop at for a hard wax, okay? But our proportions are for the hard wax. So I have, you'll see this is the first time you see me cooking that does not have a double boiler. You need lots and lots of heat. You also really need to be careful because we're going to be cooking sugar, and when we get down to the hard wax, we're going to bring it right to where it's almost about to burn. So your sugar is going to be obscenely hot. So please be careful. Also, what you're going to need to do is when we pull it from the heat, you don't want to turn your burner off. You're actually going to want to take your pot off and put it on a heat-safe surface. So I actually have a Silpat here that is heat-safe. So when I say pull it from the heat, it's not turn the heat off. It's actually take it completely off the burner because your sugar will continue to cook in the pot because it is so darn hot. So here we go. I'm going to start with my water and go right in with my sugar. I started with my water just because I knew I preheated my pot, as you heard. And I am going to make sure I'm whisking really well. I'm bringing my heat down. And I'm going to start cooking it. Now, a lot of people ask, why do I need lemon juice or lime juice or vinegar in here? We need that acid. What the acid's going to do is our sugar, our white sugar, is sucrose. And when we heat it, if we don't add an acid to it, and we just have water and sugar, the water is going to evaporate, and then your sucrose is going to recrystallize, okay? So when you add an acid, bring my heat back up now that we're starting to dissolve. When you add an acid, it's actually going to break down your sucralose and bring it down and create fructose and glucose. And that's how you can cook your sugar without it recrystallizing and coming back to granulated sugar, all right? So I'm going to let this cook for a while. Right now, if you could see in my bowl or in my pot, and you'll see it when we release this on our channel, you're going to see some great inside the pot shots. But right now, we just have some sugar that is heating up, and I'm going to be bringing it to a boil. So let's talk a little bit about sugaring. Sugaring actually started in about the 1900s outside of Persia. That's where we had a lot of white sugar actually coming from. And then, of course, was adopted by that whole Middle Eastern area into Egypt, okay? So we tend to think of sugaring from Egypt, but it actually started in Persia, but in that same, area. And when it comes to sugar for a waxing product, what you're going to notice is that it's almost like a hybrid between hard wax and soft wax, in the sense of you can work with this as a hard wax or as a strip wax, but you will still put a powder barrier down, just like you would with waxing with a strip, but the sugar itself, unless your wax is, or your sugaring is too hot when you apply it, it won't really adhere to the skin at all. So it has a more gentle nature like hard wax, but it's definitely stickier like a strip wax. And we're just bringing this up. We want to slowly bring this up to a boil. We're about halfway there. You're gonna see, if you could look right in here, I'm actually at like a simple syrup. And you see I'm already starting to like smoke, and this is gonna get very, very, very hot. So you do need to be careful. Even if you have a pot that has like a stay cool handle, you're gonna wanna use a towel or a hot mitt, because if you are, like for myself, I was cooking this at home to see our end little products in front. I actually have a really high BTU, and so my waxes, it can get up to almost 500 degrees, so you gotta be careful. It's starting to boil. I'm gonna let it kind of do its thing until it gets really, really foamy. So what you're gonna notice is with the hard wax version of this, it's very, very, very dark. It almost looks black, and we're gonna pull it right when it gets to a deep, deep, deep caramel. If any of you ever cook, if you're a regular cook or a home chef, you may know that when you're cooking meat, you want to pull it and you let it rest, because there's carryover cooking and it keeps kind of cooking on you. And the same thing happens with the sugar. So we're going to pull it like a couple shades before we're ready to go. I'm going to bring my heat down because I am super bubbly and foamy. You can see that it's really foamy. And keep bringing it down. And it's going to start to look white, because as you whisk, and you want to continually whisk this, you're adding air bubbles into it. Those air bubbles are going to settle out as it cools, but you're going to have to bring your heat down as it cooks because of those air bubbles, because we don't want it to overflow. So right now, it almost looks like, I'm whisking dish detergent in water. It's got that nice bubbliness, and it's just barely starting to get a little color. So I'm going to pull this. If we were making this as a strip wax version, which again is 1 cup of sugar, quarter cup of lemon juice, quarter cup of water, we're going to pull this to when it's about 2 shades lighter than our jar right here. So it's almost going to look like if you've seen honey that's in the raw, and it's kind of solidified and it has almost a milky appearance. Again, it's those air bubbles. So we're going to pull it at that point, and I'll show you what it looks like before we go back into the dark amber, because it will continue to darken and cook as it cools. Now, when it comes to cooling, you're going to need to think about how you want to store this. Now, I usually use mason jars, because then I can heat it up in a like a water bath, like a hot water bath in my kitchen. But you can purchase empty tins and use it right out of your wax pot, or if you've completed a can of wax and you want to go through the tedious nature of cleaning out the whole can, you can. If you decide to use a mason jar or glass jar like me, what you're going to want to do is, whether it's the strip version or the hard wax version, you're going to want this to cool a bare minimum of 30 minutes before you package it. And then you're going to want to take your glass jar, and you're going to want to put boiling water in it first to heat the jar. Then pour your semi-cool, and trust me, when it looks like it's cool, it's still hundreds of degrees. But then you're going to slowly pour it into the glass jar, because you need to temper that glass. If you don't temper that glass, your glass could shatter. So you kind of want to preheat that glass jar, pour the water out, and then carefully pour in your hot sugar after it's cooled a minimum of 30 minutes. Hard wax, I would give it 45 minutes to an hour. Do not package this in plastic. You will melt your plastic. Just letting you know. So we are about 3/4 of the way to strip wax, And what I'll do is when we get to the right color, I'm gonna put my spatula in and let it pour so you can kind of see the color. And then at the edit, you're gonna see the great overhead shot of how this is looking. It takes a while for it to start to caramelize, but once you start getting that light color like I'm getting now, it's gonna cook really fast. And you're probably noticing I'm playing with the heat a little bit because I don't want overflow. Because trust me, nothing burns like hot sugar. So again, I cannot stress this enough. Be very careful when you're doing this. And constantly keep it going. You can stop every second or so, but we just don't want to burn it. Because then it's toast. No good. Now, I also recommend, if you're doing the hard wax method and you're going to put your hard wax in a glass jar, after you temper your jar, spray it with a little bit of non-stick or wipe a little bit of coconut oil in there and then pour your hard wax in, because that way, if you have a wide mouth jar like mine, after it's cool, you can actually flip the jar upside down and it'll slip right out for you. If you're using it as a strip wax, doesn't matter. You can put it in like a warm bath to slightly melt it and then pour it into an empty can if you're going to use it in your wax pot. So we are almost there. I'm at a light cream, and again, it takes a long time to get it to that cream color, but to go from here to here is seconds. I'm gonna pause every once in a while to really get that heat going. So when I actually did package both these waxes last night, and I let it cool uncovered overnight, you don't want to cover it when it's hot because you'll get all the condensation. But it looked very creamy, but in the morning again, all those air bubbles settled, and they disappeared. Once you notice that you're starting to get color, you need to constantly move it, or if you're going to stop just for a second and then go right back in. Remember, you're going to want to pull it about 1 to 2 shades light, because A, the air bubbles are going to make it look lighter than it really is, and B, as it cools, it's going to keep cooking. It can take up to 10 minutes to get it to that strip wax if you're starting with like a cold pot on a cold burner. I'm almost there, and it's kind of like finding that right point, because we do want some of that water to evaporate as well, so it isn't too runny when we package it for strip wax, but we still want it fluid.
What does it smell like?
It smells right now like you're making caramel. And then when we get it to that dark phase, it'll smell like a really deep, rich, like salted caramel. To not quite burned sugar smell, but it definitely has a rich, deep scent to it.
It's starting to smell good.
It does start to smell good, right? Okay, so I'm going to turn the heat down just because so I can show you the color.
What is the shelf life, Mary?
The shelf life, that's a great question. Now, there are no preservatives in here. So it is going to be, I would say, about like 2 weeks. As long as, again, just like regular wax, you're not double dipping. So I'm going to pull this just so I don't overheat it, and I'm going to show you. It's hard to see, but it's almost like a light cream color. And that's what we need for the strip wax. Again, it's going to keep cooking while it's cooling. And those air bubbles make it look a lot lighter than it is. But think of almost like diluted honey, okay? To give you an idea, when I packaged this last night, I'm going to keep cooking it and get it to that dark amber. It literally was half as golden as it is now because of all those air bubbles making it look white. So pull it, when in doubt, pull it early. You can always remelt it and recook it. It's a very forgiving product. So now I'm going to crank that heat back up so we can get it to a deep caramel, really like a caramel sauce, or yeah, just like a really caramel. And I pulled it, I would say you're going to pull it when it's a little bit darker than this, but remember, it's going to keep cooking and it's going to keep darkening as it cooks after you pull it from the heat. So it's kind of like,
You'll be able to see the overhead.
yeah, you'll be able to see it in the overhead. But it's kind of like playing like dodgeball, like how quick or how close can I get it to before burn? Because once it's burned, it's not going to be pliable anymore when you warm it up. It'll just shatter. So it's kind of playing chicken. That's what I'm thinking. It's like you're playing chicken with the sugar. How far can I cook it before I ruin it? And you may burn your first batch if you're going for hard wax, and that's okay. Because when you think about it, this whole pot, which gives me, the hard wax would be 2 of those jars. I mean, it maybe cost me $2. So if you, for lack of a better word, ruin it, not a big deal. Let your wax cool in your metal pot, and then pour into your preheated jar, and then just soak it in hot soapy water, because it's sugar, it'll dissolve. Another benefit of using sugaring, if you like to sugar, is it's water soluble. So unlike strip wax and hard wax, if you get wax on yourself, like on your clothes, it's kind of toast, this washes right out.
Would you want to refrigerate it or?
Don't need to. No need to. Because, and I'll show you after I pull this off the heat, even if I was to take the strip wax and turn it upside down, it's solid.
I don't know if they heard that refrigeration.
But yeah, you don't need to refrigerate it. You can, but there's no need. We're almost there. You'll also notice that it will get, because you're creating caramel sauce basically, thicker because you're evaporating the water, and again, you're breaking that sucrose down into fructose and glucose. Once you hit the strip wax stage, you notice I'm not stopping, letting it heat a little bit, and then whisking like crazy. You don't want to stop, because you could either boil over or burn at the bottom. And once you have a little bit of burned sugar in your pot, it will cause a catalytic reaction and your whole thing will burn. So it's got, I know it's been like the longest stirring phase ever. I'm going to have some guns after this, but
I think someone asked if you added the preservative, would it have a longer shelf life? But since we're organic, I don't know.
we're organic, no, and then the preservatives you can now. So you will see some recipes that will have like agar or guam. Sometimes they'll put in a little bit of cornstarch or a preservative. Know that you can't just buy a preservative, toss it in here. It's going to mess up your recipe. So if that's something that you're looking for, I would suggest you to really specifically look for that type of a recipe, because this being a natural organic product, and if you are a baker, you know it's chemistry. You can't just be like, oh, I had a little bit of this, a little bit of that. If I said, oh, instead of a 1/4 cup of lemon juice, I'm just going to use 1/8 of a cup because that's all I have, it's not going to work. It's chemistry. Okay, so now I'm almost there. In my pot, it looks like this. So I need to get it about 2 shades darker, and it's going to happen very fast. And then as this cools, I'll show you, really what the consistency is like in the jar. Any other questions as I wax away?
It's looking yummy. From the sky camera.
Oh, another benefit, obviously, of using honey wax, even as a strip wax, is it dissolves with water again. So for your client, when you remove the wax normally with like a wax or removing oil, you can just use a hot towel from your cabbie, and then they don't get sticky at all. A lot of people do try to use the hard wax sugaring for bikini waxing. It's not always successful because you have a lot of body heat in that area. So you can sugar, I would just suggest the strip wax. The hard wax may not set properly because, again, it doesn't have those preservatives and stabilizers that a traditional hard wax would have, just so you know. Okay, I got about half a shade to go. You'll also notice it when it comes to strip wax, or hard wax, you're gonna be close because it's gonna foam less and less. Because, again, more of that water has evaporated, more of that sucrose has broken down into glucose and fructose. We have to stay on top of it. So I'm going to show you, I'm about a shade off of where I want to be, but again, to show you the color, you see it's much darker. Now we're at almost the color of the light strip wax jar. I just needed to get it one shade darker so it's that nice hard sugaring. Now, let's say you evaporate too much water out of your hard wax, and so you're having difficulty working with it. If you've ever seen, and you might see it on YouTube every once in a while, people who pull sugar, and they create pulled sugar, and they pull it, and they put air bubbles into it, that will actually soften your hard wax for you. So a lot of people will actually knead that wax, like they'll warm it up, pull out a glob, knead it, and stretching it and folding it over like candy stretching. It will make it lighter because you're adding air to it, but it makes it more forgiving when you're first learning how to work with hard wax, or sugar wax, I should say, in a hard form. All right, I'm gonna pull it now because it is a nice, what you and I would consider, if I was to pour this like over a cheesecake, a great caramel sauce. But remember, and this is a heat safe mat. It's so hot. Like, depending on the BTUs on your burner, between 200 and 500 degrees, it's gonna keep cooking for like 30 minutes to an hour. But now you're gonna see how dark it is. I'm doing that for the overhead camera. And then I'm also gonna show you guys, let's see, it's a nice dark color. And then wait, I got you guys for a second. It's definitely a nice dark golden. You are going to be tempted to keep cooking it. Please do not. Because again, if you get it a few shades darker, it will be burned. So I guarantee you, this caramel color, which looks just like this, will be that dark by the time you package it. It's gonna keep cooking and cooking and cooking. All right. So, if we're looking at our end product and you need to let it cool at least 24 hours, this is our strip wax, and it's still even solid. And if you think about it, it is going to be solid when you buy a can of honey wax too, right? But if I was to go in, I could actually push and put a dent into it. So you can warm it up in your microwave for a couple seconds, better yet, just a water bath, and then you can pour it into your wax pot. When you look at your hard wax, which is what we have cool in here, it is definitely like hard, like hard. So definitely warm this up with a hot bath, water bath, just for like a minute or two. I like the wide mouth bottles because then I can invert it, whole thing plops right out, and then I can portion it, I can do whatever I need to. But that is how you make your strip and your hard wax. Just remember, your water and your lemon juice are the same ratio. They're both a 1/4 cup. Strip wax, you just need 1 cup of sugar. Hard wax, 2 cups of sugar. And then obviously cook for longer. So thank you so much for spending time with us. I can't wait to see you next week, and have a great day.